Good evening, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome. So, yeah, it's good to see everyone here. Who have we got here? Shall I just say a few hellos before we start? So we've got someone called Roger Yates. Can't think who that is. We've got Kate here. Kate J. Hi, Kate. Lovely to see you. We have got Deb. Deb hasn't missed a show, I do believe. Deb, well done for showing up every week. Thank you very much. We got V here again. Lovely to see you. And Philip from New York. Oh, I thought he was going to say he's from somewhere else then today. No, he's still in New York, I believe. Philip, hello and welcome. Say hello, everyone, if you're here. We've got Urban Bongo. Brilliant name. Urban Bongo's here as well. But yeah, say hello if you're here. Kadri Taperson.
I wasn't that impressed by the Philip one, Wendy. Do you want to do that again?
Oh, you're making me do it again?
No, I'm not making you do anything.
Oh, see how it goes in this patriarchal world. Yeah. Yay. Phillips, hello in New York. Is that better? Is that better?
That's much better, yeah.
And Dennis has just joined us as well. And Lynn Sawyer's here. Hey, Lynn, good to see you. So, as you can see, we've got a very special guest panelist today. We've got Dr. Corey Lee Wrenn. And
I'm trying to post on my Facebook that I'm here.
Excellent. Multitasking. Brilliant.
Hey, Corey, your hiding of your washing machine didn't last very long.
Great.
It wouldn't be the same without it.
It wouldn't be the same. Definitely not. But yeah, we're here mostly to talk about Corey's new YouTube channel that has just been launched. Corey, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your channel and why you've launched this?
Well, I was just thinking how meta this is. So we're on YouTube talking about YouTube. There's a few reasons why this kind of converged here and now. I've had a YouTube page just there as a sort of dump for random crap for, 10 years or so. But for those of you who don't know, in the United Kingdom, the higher education system is, I would say, it's at its lowest point. And so over the past few years, there's been massive layoffs, lots of redundancies, entire departments have been axed. And at my university, at the University of Kent, which when I came to Kent, it was one of the leading institutions, but certainly for sociology. Unfortunately, now we are down to about a third or a fourth of our faculty. Our recruitment numbers are at an all-time low. I shouldn't be saying this, but this is the truth. They won't see this. And it's just a really sad place to be. And basically what happened was, I'm in my 40s now, and I had finally reached basically the equivalent of what tenure would be in the United States. And when I was awarded that, when I should have applied years ago, but when I was awarded that, they were in the middle of another financial crisis and a round of redundancies, and they put a pay freeze on me. So I sat at basically entry-level pay, and I'm at this point almost 40 years old. Then the pay freeze is lifted, and I find out that all this great work that I've been doing, all the books, all the articles, all the conferences, all the volunteer work, all the teaching, all of that amounted to £100 a month raise. And the promise of no future promotions basically happening in academia. And so basically at that point, I realized that there's no more incentive whatsoever to invest extra work into the institution because the promise of career progression is pretty much over. Obviously, I've been applying to other institutions, but this is a national situation. So jobs have basically dried up. And in the United States, of course, it's even worse with Donald Trump. So one of the big things that happened as a result of that, not just my existential crisis as someone who's still entering their 40s, well into their 40s now, and the prospect of home ownership is now over. But what also happened was the university in its crisis mode decided to switch over to a different teaching pattern. So instead of having 2 major terms, it's now switching over starting this autumn to 3 terms that are 8 weeks long, and you're just back to back. And so the way that worked out was, first off, they canceled my animal rights class, which even though that had 70 students signed up last term, apparently is not a big seller now on this new system. But now my teaching has been sort of rearranged. And so I actually don't go back to teaching until January of 2026. So what all this kind of gets to is that I'm in this very unique career position now where I had a large chunk of time, well, over 6 months of time, where I'm working on my research. Obviously, we'll talk about that today. I'm still working on academic stuff and still marking papers and responding to students, but I'm not teaching in that sort of traditional way until January. And so I'm at this sort of crisis. How about a moment for new opportunities? And thinking about, well, where am I going to put my energy now that's not going to be towards this broken academic system that just sucks the life out of people and you get nothing in return? And I've started to come back, basically, Wendy, to my roots as an animal rights activist, because some of you might remember we've been in this a long time, haven't we? Back in the day when we did blogs and Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. And I was really engaged with that. And in fact, it fed a lot of my academic research. Well, now I'm looking at it on the other side where I'm no longer in my 20s anymore. I'm in my 40s and I have this wealth of academic experience and, research under my belt. And I'm thinking about putting it in journals where nobody sees it in hopes that at least it'll give me some kind of academic recognition and it could give me life security. That's over. Why not move back to what originally got me into this in my 20s and start putting it into channels where people will actually see it and put it to good use? So it's not just my YouTube page. I've also been working on rebranding, if you will, my Instagram page. And Roger, the last time I was here, I think the last time you asked me about TikTok. I'm still not ready. I'm frightened of it. Maybe we can talk about that.
But you've been doing something similar all this time. I mean, you're an accomplished academic and author of so many books, and they are published by very prestigious publishing houses. And yet, all this time, you've made sure that not only students or those who can afford to buy those books have access to the information. You've made articles available through the Vegan Feminist Network by giving access to Vegan Sociology conference to non-academics. And also when you write in a way that it's not only destined to be understood by those with bachelors and masters and PhDs, but you write I have this feeling that you write for the people that are within the social movements and would benefit from that. Yeah. So is this, and if I'm not mistaken, this notion of democratizing theory is rooted to Black feminism. So is this for you a very feminist thing to do?
No, absolutely. So we're going to talk about, I guess, the content of the new YouTube. Well, the YouTube page is not new. It's just I'm putting new stuff on it. But the new content that's going on there is as a result of this book I'm working on, Vegan Feminism. And that is absolutely, you're very much so right on that. That is so foundational to feminist methodology, is not just to take from your participants, the community you're researching, but also think about how can this research then be put into the community's better use. And number one, that means making it accessible. And so one of the things that I've been doing with the book is that I'm still an academic. I'm still full-time academic. I'm having access to research that most people can't get access to, but also they don't have the training to find it or the training to sit down with it or the time to sit down with it. It's my job to sit down with it. So yeah, this is a major part of feminism, Nella. That's an absolutely important point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I totally agree with Nella as well. I love your books and your writing. It's so accessible and you don't feel kind of excluded. It's very inclusive. I think that's brilliant. We're all big fans here, Corey, as you know. And I just wondered, could we start with a real easy peasy question for you, which is, could you tell us maybe, for maybe people who are not as familiar with vegan feminism, as what does it mean to you? What does vegan feminism mean? And also something that you said on one of your introduction videos to the new launch is you believe that vegan feminism is the route to animal liberation. And I just wanted to kind of get you to maybe spell out why you think that is. So two really simple questions there, Corey.
This is me getting my just desserts, because at the end of every single one of my interviews with participants, that's the question I ask them. And every single time they're like, Sometimes they have very polished answers, but it's a very overwhelming question because vegan feminism, I would say, inherently is quite multifaceted. It's looking at multiple social movements and social injustices at the same time. Obviously, what makes it unique is that it sees non-human animals at the center of that. It draws on Black feminism quite a bit. There's quite a bit of criticism there as well, by the way, about is it possibly appropriating that? Black feminism historically is about intersectionality, but also starting with the center of looking at race. Nonetheless, it does bring in non-human animals and may not say that non-human animals are the end-all be-all of social justice issues, but it's certainly saying it's a major, major facet of that. And it's not just non-human animals, but also looking at veganism as a plant-based sort of approach to social organization, food systems, community health, et cetera, et cetera. So that, for me, vegan feminism is basically addressing this plethora of social problems, taking an intersectional lens, maybe being critical and cautious about how we do that, respectful of other movements that have originated that idea, but then also thinking, well, what happens when we bring non-human animals into it? Because we do have quite a lot of research that shows that what we've done to non-human animals ongoing, what we're still doing to non-human animals is foundational to so many social oppressions, beginning with the advent of hunting, as the work of David Nybert would point out. And then also looking at domestication. So Jim Mason's also looked at that. David Nybert's looked at that. Brian Luke has looked at that. I'm speaking about a lot of men, which is an interesting point here because men have also been contributing to vegan feminist theory. So that's basically the idea, is looking at how non-human animals are at the center of that. The oppression of non-human animals is sort of a blueprint, if you will, for other historical oppressions.
Yeah, brilliant. So, and does that speak to why you think vegan feminism is at the root of animal liberation? How are they intertwined?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, well, you can't, I guess the adage here is that you can't just single out one oppression in a society that uses all these mechanisms simultaneously. So if we were to say, well, we're going to focus on non-human animals and we don't care about, say, gender, well, there's so many things that are fundamental to the gender institution that also shapes our relationship with other animals. As just one of many, many examples, we could look at how we sexually abuse or sexually exploit non-human animals for the food system or for entertainment or for companionship. So there's just many, many ways that we can look at other institutions of oppression and see that actually they're sharing and overlapping. And if you try to single out one, you're missing a lot of the underlying mechanisms.
Yeah. Did you ever get
go ahead. No, I was only going to follow up with that, but you might have a similar follow up anyway.
I just wanted to ask, did you ever get pushback from non-vegan feminist theorists? Because on a very basic level in the street, non-vegan feminists very often say that comparing non-human animals to women, it's in a species system that sees non-human animals as inferiors, works in a way against women. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, about me personally getting pushback on that, like I'm a bit of unlike people like Carol Adams or Marty Keel, who actively went in, and Greta Gard, who actively went into those spaces that were feminist but not vegan. I kind of shy away from that kind of stuff. I just don't have the patience for it. So don't necessarily have a lot of that firsthand experience. Although I just have general dismissiveness of anything vegan or animal rights at my at my university. But yeah, so this is a major thing. And one of the things that has come out of my research, Nella, is looking at the copious archives of Marty Keel, who I think she died in 2010. She's about 10 years ago that she died. And so all of her archives are at Smith College, and most of them have been digitized. And so one of the most painstaking aspects of the research project for vegan feminism is I went through each one of those files and just looked at what she had saved. And bless her, she actually had saved quite a lot of correspondence. Of course, she was active before the internet was a big thing, so a lot of it was paper, and so it's all scanned in there. And Nella, there's a lot of actual nasty correspondence with philosophers, because she really aspired to get involved with the environmental ethics community. There's a lot of really nasty stuff from the Green Party, the environmentalists, explicitly sexist stuff. There's also some correspondence back and forth with women politicians. There's a lot of record there. If people are interested, anyone, by the way, speaking of democratizing access to research, it's available for anyone to go and download if you want to poke around and anyone wants to see this for themselves. Not that you'd want to, because there's so much it took me months to get through it.
And it's interesting because that is one of the pushbacks in the movement, actually, that when you get people, being very anti-intersectional, if we're going to use that term, I sometimes don't really think it's a correct term in the way we use it in the movement. I think we kind of use it as an umbrella term for lots of different things, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. But there's a lot of pushback saying that, we are expected in the movement to be allies to other movements like feminism or Black Lives Matter, anti-racism, whatever movement it might be, yet they're not on board with the animal rights movement. So why are we?
Oh no.
Right.
It's quite ominous when that happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Let me check
there is a question to answer. Whoops, that one there. Which archive were you talking about?
Kadri, this is Marti Kheel, MartiKheel. She's the founder of Feminists for Animal Rights, which was the major feminist vegan organization from about 1983 until the year 2000. We lost you, Wendy. We got scared.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
She's back.
I don't know what happened.
going to text you.
I wondered if it was just me. It was just me then. So I just wondered if what you'd say to that kind of critique that other left-leaning movements are not on board with the animal rights movement, and yet we are trying to get vegans to be in solidarity with all these different movements. I just wonder what your take on that is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stinker, isn't it? Because this is so. Well, first off, let's be honest. We live in a bit of a bubble because, just as one example, a few weeks ago, and I posted this on my Instagram. If people want to go and scroll down, it's not that far down. The Vegan Society posted a very short blog from a non-binary person. I believe they were non-binary. They were Taiwanese American, and they were talking about biological essentialism and how we need to be open about gender fluidity because we're doing the same thing with non-human animals, like essentializing them based on their supposed biological differences. Pretty straightforward stuff, I thought, and yet this person was completely blasted in the comments to where the Vegan Society had to shut down the comments because it was just all these people who were saying you're taking attention away from the animals. So let's be very clear that this is 2025 and we're still dealing with that idea of animals first, and anything else, any other social justice ideas are considered to be detractions. Nonetheless, there is a big faction of us within the animal rights movement that does feel a duty to be involved with and aware of other social justice causes. I would say that that's probably also the case in other movements. The idea is that speciesism is so ingrained in our society, they simply are not seen, non-human animals are not seen as persons. Dinesh Wadawell has actually written about this. And by the way, this is going to be a major question I grapple with in the book, Vegan Feminism, is what good really is intersectionality? Practically, how useful is it? Obviously, I've already talked about appropriation issues, but there's actually quite a lot of scholars, vegan scholars of color, who are now becoming a little bit more skeptical of intersectionality. AFCO is one, Dinesh Wadawell is another. And one of the arguments he makes, and this comes from his recent book, Animals and Capital, and this is published by University of Edinburgh Press, I think last year. But one of the main arguments he makes is that he's looking at the socialist movement and workers' rights movements and unions, and why don't they look at animal issues, especially looking at factory farms, slaughterhouses, when there's so clearly parallels happening. And he says this is just evidence that intersectionality might be nice theoretically, but in practice it's not dawning on people that these things are connected, and it just seems to fall flat. The experience of non-human animals, and this is a major critique of intersectionality for lots of different groups, that the experience of non-human animals is so unique that perhaps intersectionality does not always serve them well or appropriately or well enough. So that's what I would say to that. I think that first off, we are in a bit of a bubble in this panel today. The animal rights movement is not cohesive about intersectionality. And number two, I would imagine that people in other groups feel like they're taking the same approach, but they just don't register non-human animals as persons.
Sadly. Yes. we'd all be a lot stronger for it if they were. But yeah, thanks for that. Just there's
one question from me, Corey. Sorry, Wendy. It's just to pick up on what you was just saying there about intersectionality. Is it almost been seen as a bit of a mistake, not necessarily just as it were for our movement, but wider than that now? And we should have we should have possibly just concentrated on NIBA and entanglements, I think.
Yeah, that's like the OG intersectionality theory in our movement. That he was arguing that back in 2003 is the first article I saw him making that claim. And intersectionality, by the way, we often talk about Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a legal scholar. But in sociology, we have Patricia Hill Collins, who was making the same theory, also a Black feminist, incidentally. She was making the same theory back in the 90s. And then we have Audre Lorde, even further back from that. She was making these same claims. So this goes on and on. Kimberly Crenshaw is only one of them. So this is a long, ongoing theory. It's not brand new. However, in the animal rights movement, it is a bit brand new because I can say this as someone having gone through the archives, Marty Keel, Feminists for Animal Rights, looking back at the stuff from the 1900s. They were all quite intersectional, but they didn't really always make that argument that these are working on similar mechanisms that we do today, which is pulling straight from Black feminism. The critique, it seems to be, is that we shouldn't, not that it's just not working and we should give up on it, but I think the major critique is that we jumped on this a little bit too quickly. It's taken off a bit like a fad amongst the more liberal leftist folks in the animal rights movement. And we didn't really stop to think about, well, what does it actually mean and how does this work in practice? And a lot of that, this is where the appropriation thing comes in, I think, because a lot of it is like, oh, Black women came up with this. It must be great. And then just kind of champion it because Black women did it. It's like, okay, but wait. Have you actually read any of this stuff? There's actually one chapter. I can't remember exactly the name. And it was Nathan Poirier edited it. And it's basically on very critical, radical theories and animal liberation. It's like published with Peter Lang. But they have a chapter in there. It's with Zane McNeil. And they have a chapter on Ada B. Wells, who is this amazing Black feminist from the South in the United States. And she's done all this really cool work. I used to teach her in a 101 introductory sociology because she had a very critical mindset about white supremacist media. And there's so much that we can learn from that. But what I'm using this reference for is because in the beginning of that chapter, they also make this claim. This book, by the way, just came out. They make this claim that we're always talking about intersectionality, but have we actually read any of it except for this kind of superficial homage to Kimberly Crenshaw? Has anyone sat down and read Black Feminist Theory by Patricia Hill Collins? Has anyone looked at Ada B. Wells's readings? So that what I'm getting at here is that we have 100 years plus of Black feminist theorizing. And those are just some of the names of many, many, many. But have we actually sat down with them and thought about what does this mean in practice? And of course, there's a whole body of social movement theory as well that looks at the possibilities of intersectionality. But we live in the age of TikTok, Roger. So we're doing our like soundbite eco-feminist.
It's my fault.
yes. Oh, your fault, Roger. I'm sorry. We've got to hold Roger accountable.
I do have a follow-up, if I may, because there was a time when people started to understand that intersectionality within our movement could be a problem, and so there was a lot of talk about pro-intersectionality, which is a big improvement, it seems to me. But I think we're kind of lost with that word now, in the sense that you mentioned animals first, but the real problem in the movement is animals only.
Yeah,
and yes. that is a lot of right-wing people who have come into the movement in the same way as the right is on the ascendancy everywhere. I mean, just look at the States, look at Starmer in Britain, right? And so, you know, there's a problem, because for the right, intersectionality is just a cudgel to beat liberals with.
Well, I don't know what you want me to say to that, except that, yeah, I mean, I guess the whole point is that we need to just be critical about it and actually explore the reading and, yeah, not just kind of write it off, but also just be critical and conscious when we use it, and careful.
Just a little follow up on that, actually. I think in the movement, there's definitely the right wing faction, and also, you know, there's a lot of let's cloak our right wing values under, you know, like just accusing everyone of just being so woke and all of that stuff because they're intersectional. So I think there is that, but I do think there's also a more human aspect to it as well. I think there's a lot of people who are very traumatized in the movement by their own experiences, by being so aware of what's going on for fellow animals at every second of every day, that there's a lot of misanthropy about that. And I think that feeds into the animals only, because I don't think it's only just people being right wing and trying to be you know, just let's not care about humans. I think there's a sense of anger towards what humans are doing, and therefore why are you considering the oppressor at all times when we're doing our activism, our campaigns? Why are we always having to consider the oppressor? This is movement for our fellow animals. And I think there's a lot of that in it. I think there's a lot of humanness in it, and a lot of human reaction and emotion involved in it. I don't think it's just rational. I think it's emotional.
Yeah, and may I say that the animal rights movement is in no way unique in this way. I was just thinking, for instance, so this weekend I went to Margate Pride, and I got a bit, sounds like, but I did get a bit teary. And no, I hadn't had anything to drink. I was just like, wow. But because it is Pride, let's be honest. But there's thousands of people marching. I guess I didn't expect it because I live in Canterbury, and our Pride has been so corporatized. There's like a few drag queens at the beginning of the march, and then they're all there for photo ops, and then the march is over and it's done. But in Margate, which I totally didn't expect, thousands of people marched. And at the very beginning of that march, the parade, if you will, it was a march, though, it was a political march, with these huge transgender flags. You could see it coming over the crest as they came down on the city, these massive transgender flags. That would not have happened 10 years ago. In fact, the gay rights movement, very much so, left transgender folks high and dry, and lesbians before that. And then the feminists left the lesbians out, right? And transgender people. So this has been going on for decades, about movements just being, I guess, as you're saying, having an emotional response. Perhaps it's also a strategic thing that they think that's what it is. But the fact is, movements can change. Movements can start to adopt that intersectional approach or intersectional approach. And I think we are starting to see more of that. That's taking a lot longer than I would expect it to. But the fact that I saw all these transgender flags, and then as it goes on down, here comes the Palestine, here comes the refugees. I probably counted 50 signs in support of Gaza, people of Gaza and Palestine. Like that, and that to me was astounding, because of course there's a lot of, for people who aren't aware, especially in the United States, you talk anything pro-Palestine and you are, you know, you could be kicked out of school, that you can be deported or whatever, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So I guess the point is that historically, a lot of other movements have been the same way, but it is possible to change. We are starting to change that conversation. I think in the animal rights movement, it's now getting a little bit more mainstream. Thankfully, if the Vegan Society, for Pete's sake, is posting about this stuff, like that, even they wouldn't have been doing this 10 years ago. Progress, I think, is being made. And may I also make a comment, like Roger, you mentioned the for a while, I think Sarah Woodcock was promoting the idea of pro-intersectionality as a word, and it didn't really go anywhere for a while. I kind of pushed back on that because that's a word we use professionally in the social sciences. It's kind of been co-opted as just like a normal term now. I mean, you can use the word entanglements, but it kind of means the same thing, doesn't it? So I think the idea is that when it's not just about paying lip service in our terminology, it's about actually accommodating, to at least to some extent, this wealth of Black feminist knowledge, and not just kind of like superficially skimming over the top and, you know, throwing it on stuff and not really understanding where it comes from and what it actually means.
Well, I mean, that's obviously what happens to a lot of things. But Crenshaw did say that she expected it to be applied. So that there is that. Some people said it should be kept as a Black legal kind of idea.
Oh, really?
Andy's got to shoot in a moment. I don't know whether that's a gunfight or something. Could Corey provide a soundbite response to the animals only vegan reducitarians? Would make a great.
Oh, no, I'm going to talk.
Well, we're determined to get you on.
Corey's, yeah, come on, you're resistant to TikTok, Corey. What'd you say? Little
I didn't set that up, by the way. I didn't.
Okay. All right, people, TikTok, listen up. Animals only makes no sense because oppression historically, currently, is a multifaceted entanglement of various systems of subordination, animalization, feminization, sexualization, humiliation. We need to see these as one cohesive social problem. Although I really do side with that. I give most of my energy to non-human animals. I also see that these are all connected, and helping other movements with some of my time and some of my expertise is certainly not going to be anything against non-human animals. It can only benefit animal liberation.
Ta-da! She's here all week. Fabulous.
Let's have a drum kit.
There was a little bit of guidance from you earlier, actually. I think from Cosmic Antinatalist Corey as well. This is from ages ago. Corey might benefit from using Photopea to make thumbnails. I know it's shallow, right, but that's social media.
Can we talk? Well, let's get meta now. All right, Cosmic Antinatalist. I love the little avatar there. I'm not sure who that is, but the little like side thing. Okay, so I just started with this, and I already on my other YouTube channel have started to move away from that font. I'm actually very cognizant of this and paying attention to it and watching a lot of tutorials and playing around with the contrast and the font and all that to make sure it's like nice and legible. But with the feminist one, a lot of those I made a few weeks ago need to be redone, but I will check out Photopea. I've been using Canva, actually splurged and got a paid account to that, which lets me do lots of fun things. But actually, you guys, I think we should talk about the maybe hidden labor of doing this work that we're doing right now, because it's a lot. Just to edit a video, I mean, it's most of the day for me to do that. Yeah. And then write up notes on it for the website, which also are going into my book and all this kind of stuff. That's why I'm sorry. I poured a glass of wine because this is the end of my day. I spent all morning editing videos for my witchcraft page, and then all day until literally right before I joined you guys was working on an interview for the Vegan Feminist stuff. All day video editing. It's so much work.
It's a lot. It's why my podcast has had a little bit of a hiatus as well, because personal stuff, but then also getting back into it with the mindset of I know how much more time I'm going to have to be putting into that, and like we used to do the show, didn't we, Nella and Roger, like once a week. Then it became like once every other week, and it's like I was just saying this the other day. I feel like I've got 3-time jobs: my actual job, the care of the residents here, and then the animal rights projects. And sometimes you just feel like, wow. And yet also the other side of that is there's real resistance to anyone in the movement who does get paid to do any activism. So there's like, where's the sweet spot there? Well, I think, there are people who will maybe, well, like, like say the influencers, let's say, for want of a better term, like who maybe will put out stuff and get a, what they call it, what do they call that thing now? I forgot the name of it, where they get support from
GoFundMe. Which one?
Not GoFundMe.
Patreon you're on about.
Oh. Patreon, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I can't think of my words sometimes. So Patreon accounts, so they'll get paid and they continue doing their activism, and they might not have loads. I don't know how much money they get or whatever, but they might have a little bit of money to help. But I think there is real resistance to that in the movement, because it's like, well, we're a social movement. It's not about you getting paid. It's not about you building a brand or a business. But I think there are difficulties within that mindset as well, aren't there? In that we do have a lot of unpaid labor and work that you're trying to do and juggle everything, and maybe you can't put your all into your activism or the projects that you'd like to do because you just physically don't have the time and energy. So I just wonder, what's sort of your take on that?
There's no way. That's why I gave you the big spiel at the beginning. Like, I wanted to be fully transparent on this. There's no way that I could launch these YouTube channels if I was teaching full time, and it's only because of this fluke of the university like tanking financially and trying to change all this semesters up that I've been able to have this chunk of time to give it a shot. Try to at least line some up so that when teaching starts, then there'll be one there. But I've been doing, like Nella said, thank you for recognizing that. I've been trying to do something like this for years now. But even with blogging, I like once a month, I force myself to post a short blog. And even that is like most of the day, even when they're only like a 4-minute read, it's so much work. But I do, the only really, I mean, I get validation for this because people tell me that they're able to access it. Whereas I'll write stuff for an academic journal and whoop, off into the ether, who knows? I think it's worth it because I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I am tooting my horn, actually. I spent a lot of time.
Toot away, Corey, toot away.
I read a lot. I'm thinking a lot. I'm writing a lot. I'm putting a lot of effort into it, basically, so other people don't have to do that. Like, that's kind of the job of an academic, isn't it? Is that let me focus on this, give you some feedback, and then you can use the feedback however you want to use it. So that's the aim here, and I'm hoping to be of use. And honestly, so many of my other colleagues, as this disaster happens in the higher university system, as the system is collapsing, all of my colleagues are just getting burnt out, thinking about getting out of academia. Some of them are going into other fields. And one of the reasons for that is like, why? If you're doing work that is unrelated to social justice, I can't imagine how you would have the fortitude to remain in that line of work at all. So for me, it's like, okay, academia is just kind of a dead end now, but I can still use the tools that I've learned from 15 years teaching in higher education towards doing this work. That's the only thing that keeps me going. If I was like an arithmetic teacher, I would just quit. What keeps you going?
Yeah. Corey, you've got some books, new books.
Oh, I was like, what?
Because part one of your reasons for launching the YouTube right now as well, wasn't it, to celebrate your vegan witchcraft? You launched on a full moon, I believe.
Nice. Yes. And then I remember I was at Pride during full moon, and then when I got back, I had like 0 views, and something's up here. I'd forgotten that. I didn't know, actually. There's a big learning curve with this, by the way. I didn't know that you had to get verified if you create a sub channel of your own channel. So it's like, oh, for Pete's sake. So anyway, it's verified now, and I have some few views on that. But yeah, that was the idea. Is what is that? Who is that? Anyway, the idea was, with vegan witchcraft, I guess with vegan feminism, you could say a similar thing. It's meant to be practiced. It's meant to be put into use because actually, I got one of the reviewers for the Vegan Witchcraft book was, oh gosh, I should put it on the website. It was so funny because they were so clearly not vegan and so clearly not impressed that I was doing vegan work. But they were basically saying, oh, she thinks she's going to start her own vegan witchcraft kind of community or whatever. Or maybe she'll be successful, but well, it's too much of a diatribe in this book. I'm like, whatever. I went on with the diatribe. And by the way, this book, speaking of the institution, the higher education institution being a bit of a farce, like the review system for Routledge is pretty paltry. And at first I was really annoyed by that because I've worked really hard on this manuscript and I want to have my peers look at it. But then again, who are my peers who's doing vegan witchcraft? Nobody really. And so I decided, actually, if Routledge doesn't care, I'm going to make this, I'm just going to go hard with my vegan stuff and I'm not going to like hide it. I'm not going to compromise it. And I really go hard on veganism in this book. But the other thing is that reviewer was right. I was actually maybe inspired by this reviewer. I was thinking that it's one thing to just theorize or critique, but what if we could actually do something with this? And in fact, when I was talking about this research over the past couple of years, I've actually had quite a few colleagues who I never would expect it, who've said like, oh, wow, I'm really into that kind of stuff, and like asking questions and sharing their experiences. And then I came to realize, actually, maybe I'm not the only vegan witch in the village. There's other people who might be interested in this. So I was thinking about maybe then trying to do some of the stuff that it's a bit embarrassing, really, because this is quite personal. It's quite private. It's not like academic theory, straight up rational, cold academic theory. This is like, all right, well, how do we actually put this into action? Let's do some candle magic. Let's talk about the full moon, that kind of stuff, because I'm hoping to actually build up a community of people to where we can think about animal rights in a positive way, or maybe even sometimes sharing the grief. So we'll see where it goes. If people aren't on board and nobody pays attention to it, then that'll be the end of it. I'll just put some videos up and leave it. But if people are into it, then I'll keep going with it. Like I would like to do, say it's full moon. Let's all get together for a live full moon gathering or whatever. Or it's Yule or it's Samhain. Let's get together online and have a meeting. And I don't know what people do on online moots. They do singing, they do chats, they do rituals. Right? Sky's the limit.
Community. I love the sound of that. Definitely.
Well, that's the thing. It's a good thing on the internet with the witchcraft communities, because we tend to be like vegans spread out. We rely on the internet to do a lot of gatherings. Like I've been here long enough now that I've got friends who are into it. So I do in-person stuff now. But when I first moved here, I didn't know anyone. And actually I found a lot of community through like Facebook groups, and they would do events over the Sabbats or full moons and things like that. But the thing is, we don't really have anything like that in veganism, where we're just kind of coming together and talking about like the emotional side of it, the compassion fatigue, the burnout, and like wanting to be more connected with animals and nature, and having something positive that we can focus on. That's not food, like we have food, but what about the more spiritual side of things, the more emotional side of things? I'm hoping to sort of fill that gap and give people a more positive channel to focus on. We'll see.
Yeah, I love the sound of that. That comes up for me a lot, actually. This, you know, how do we create spaces? Like I know we have this community here, like we talk about things, and we're hopefully creating some kind of community with people who resonate with the things we talk about, and really appreciate seeing everyone here in the chat every time we come on. It's lovely to see like the regular names and then new names pop up. And I often think to myself, like I was saying earlier, that the human emotional side of why people resent human issues being brought into the movement, because there's a lot of emotionally unregulated you know, issues, because where do we put all this? Where do we put all this? Every time we walk down a freaking supermarket aisle and we're seeing the result of atrocities and violations, where do we put that? Like every time one of my clients says to me, oh, you know, my son's coming home and we're just going to have roast lamb for dinner, and oh, we just bought this dog from the breeder, and you know, I'm in my work hat, I'm putting that somewhere, but it's all there, and every time you scroll past, you think, oh, I didn't want to see that, and it's right. And you can't unsee it. Do you know what I mean? What do we do with all of that? And and I think we end up then, like, we go to demo and protest, we might be so angry, and it all comes out in our anger and but then we also on each other. I think we turn it on each other.
Yes, this is my hope. Yes, I feel like in the past few times I've had conversations with other vegans, like that's the reaction I get, like what you just said, Wendy. In fact, I was at a conference. There's Mishka. I was at a conference in June. Yeah, she might come over here. I was at a conference
get the crisps out, Corey. She'll be over.
You won't come. Anyway, so I just started talking about this, and then it was the first time I'd been in an in-person conference. That's what it was, in a very long time, and it just sort of pouring out of me. And I guess I sounded like pretty frantic. And the guy just said, "Can I give you a hug?"
Oh,
actually, I didn't realize how worked up I was, but actually, we need to have some spaces that we can talk about these everyday things, right? And not just strategy and critiquing theory and getting together for potlucks, which is also very good, I think, for self-care, but maybe a space for emotional honesty.
It really gets overwhelming and exhausting, especially when you have to collaborate with non-vegans and you think that the cause is worthy. It's an example, I don't know, rescue work, for example. And then you have to collaborate, but it's so exhausting, and it requires so much energy, not the rescue itself, but the collaborating part of things. When you are trying to be nice and positive with people that in a way push back, and I sometimes feel so empty, so exhausted. And if there was not, a vegan network to which I could turn, I think it would be detrimental to my mental health. So these spaces are really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to give it a go with Vegan Witchcraft, but the thing is, not everybody's going to be into like drumming and moon chanting and all that kind of stuff. But let me just disclaim this, is that I myself identify as an atheist. I do witchcraft secularly, but just for me, paying attention to things like, where is the moon? Like the moon is just exiting a full moon and it's still like so bright. Like I open my doors, like normally I close all the doors because I have a deaf dog. And if there's a light from a neighbor, but I'll open the doors on a full moon because it doesn't make any difference. It's going to be bright anyway. And just paying attention to where the moon is. Or we've just left Lunasa, which is the first harvest festival of the summer season in the British Isles. And thinking about, well, what am I harvesting? Well, I'm harvesting this YouTube channel. I planned it that way, right? And me and my friends, we went out into the countryside and explored. If anyone's not seen the lost village of Dode in Kent, that is a weird and wicked place. So we did go for Lunasa. But do you see what I mean? Like these are my vegan friends. So we're doing this as a sort of way of marking the solar calendar. We celebrate the lunar calendar. And it's really just a way of kind of coming together, marking the seasons and remembering, oh yeah, there's a whole wide world of nature and the environment and the cosmos out there. And it does help to ground. But one of the things I'm doing also with the Vegan Witchcraft Project is thinking about not just following the seasons and the moon, but what are some ways that we can bring ritual in to our everyday lives as well? So for instance, if you are feeling especially wound up or really burned out for some reason over your work in speciesism, how about a candle ritual and using candle magic? Because there's something innately magical about a candle. It's soothing. But doing something like that, a simple act of self-care or putting the candle in the window in honor of non-human animals or a dog who has passed, that's witchcraft. It doesn't have to be like out in your hoods and cloaks in the forest, like Uga Chaka. It can be simple stuff, bringing ritual into the everyday. As a sociologist, I can tell you that has real effects on your psyche. And it really can be a simple, easy way to access self-care. But in a very vegan way is what I'm arguing, because it's asking us to recognize the earth, the cosmos around us, and our place within it, and kind of yanking us out of this foreground, if you will, of a patriarchal species of society, and asking us to say, pay attention, focus in on what's going on in the background, nature and time itself, right? So that can be very grounding, I think. So if that's not too weird and out there, I think maybe people might find it interesting to check out the book or check out the YouTube page, look at some of my very homely videos. And some of them will also be just cozy videos. Like for a full moon earlier this summer, I went to go explore a sacred well near Sevenoaks, England. And for Lunasa, I went and explored another well that's closer to Folkestone here in Kent. So that kind of stuff. And you can just follow me in Michigan, our explorations through the countryside.
You mean Sevenoaks? Oh, that's not far from where I take Dylan out to be out in nature near Sevenoaks. Yeah, next time you're down the well, give me a shout. I'll tell you, I'm on board, and I'm even on board for the cloaks in the woods. All of it. I'd be so
We've not gotten that far. No, we go outside, but we don't do cloaks yet. Although in the winter time.
Oh, do you know what? I've got a real craving to wear cloaks. I just do. I just really want to wear a cloak.
Thinking about it, but can we pull it off, Wendy? Can it really truly be? We're tall women. Can we pull it off?
No, that sounds brilliant. I love the sound of recognizing, like you say, time and space and place as well, which is a very eco-feminist principle, isn't it? Context and place, and where are you, and that community and a ritual and all of that. I love the sound of that, definitely.
May I say before, what you just said with ecofeminism, that's something I also explore in the book, is that actually ecofeminism in the 70s and 80s is sort of had lots of different influences. Well, it directly influenced the modern witchcraft movement, directly went straight into the ecofeminist environmental folks in California doing witchcraft, bringing back witchcraft. And then also, of course, it created vegan feminism. So one of the things I look at in the book is one of the most famous witches in the United States is a woman named Starhawk. And she lived in the Berkeley, San Francisco area at the same time as Marty Keel. They attended some of the same conferences. They've even contributed to a similar, same book. but never do they engage with one another. I think I found a brief mention of Marty Keels where she critiques Starhawk, by the way, is anti-vegan, but she's eco-feminist. So that's one of the things I'm exploring in the book is like, why this divergence where ecofeminism influenced modern witchcraft, especially American feminist witchcraft, and also vegan feminism. But only now am I trying to like bring these back together because they came from the same root. There's a lot of convergence and there's a lot of wealth there, treasures to explore. He needs to be stopped.
I love the spooky. It's great. But also on your channel, you're going to be doing interviews as well, Corey, aren't you? Interviews for your other book, Vegan Feminism, because I think Deb asked earlier about if you had a book about vegan feminism. Deb, yes, Corey does.
Yeah. So, the Vegan Witchcraft book is coming out on the 24th of this month. Pre-orders are now open. I don't even have my copy yet. It's going to be here on the 24th or 25th. I'm so excited. It's around the time of the new moon. Time for new projects to begin. But in the meantime, I earlier this year completed interviews with leading vegan feminists from around the world, mostly from the United States and Europe, but lots of other places as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm democratizing that research. I'm posting those videos at the beginning of the month, one interview per month until the release of the book, which I would imagine it's going to be about 2 years from now because I'm still writing the manuscript. The first draft is due in December, and then I'll probably need a year to revise it. So it's almost done, but it's going to be in production for a while. Doesn't matter, though, because I have these interviews that are going up at the first of every month, and you can get firsthand knowledge from these people who are, I mean, this is from all over the movement, people who are in their 80s. I have people who are in their 20s. I have people who are artists, I have people who are doctors, veterinarians, academics, of course, activists, all kinds of people who are contributing to vegan feminist theory. I have some of the expected people like Carol Adams, Christopher Sebastian, but I also have newer folks that are up and coming or people who were really active before the internet was a thing, and you may not have even known about them. Today, for instance, I was editing the interview with Brian Luke, who wrote the book Brutal in 2007, and it's a book on masculinity and the animal rights movement, masculinity and speciesism. He's a philosopher. He's not in the movement anymore. Like 30 years ago, he dropped out of academia and decided to become a musician in his local church. But he's an amazing wealth of knowledge of activism in the 80s and the 90s and gender politics. And I bet many people today would not even know who Brian Luke is, but I read his book in graduate school, and he was very much so involved with Marty Keel and that cohort of folks. So yeah, it's going to be what I would call a masterclass on vegan feminism, because I'm working really hard, not just to interview the who's who, but people from back in the past who aren't even in the movement anymore, and people who are up and coming, people of all different ages, ethnicities, races, and sexualities, and some trans folks. It's going to be all kinds of stuff. So I would definitely subscribe. Here we go. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can be alerted. I will be releasing on the very first Friday of every month one of those interviews. Thank you for asking.
Fabulous.
How's it going? This is your Instagram, right? So
yes.
Is it been an adventure for you?
Well, yeah. It's interesting. I just did it, and most of my Instagram, my Instagram has been historically the only social media platform that I've had open to the public. Like my personal Facebook, I use a fake name, and I don't really use Facebook, but I just because I felt like I needed to have some kind of open channel for networking, I left Instagram open, and it sort of gradually accumulated strangers, basically. But the only people who engaged with me on there really were my family and friends. And then all of a sudden, I decided to hit the F it button and just start putting my research on there. And my friends are like, "What is going on your Instagram page?" I said, "Just skip it." But what I've noticed, though, Roger, is that my engagement has just skyrocketed on Instagram. So people are watching them, for better or for worse. But the idea is that I'm trying to kind of dilute, I guess not dilute's not the right word, but summarize, concentrate a lot of the big ideas that I've explored in my writing and try to make them digestible. You like that with my cat? My cat's in the picture.
I want to know what's going on in this picture here.
That was a monster truck rally that was in Birchington-on-Sea, and it was excellent. It was so British. No one was like, people were jumping out of, like, they were jumping off platforms on fire. There were people flipping on motorcycles, RVs getting crushed by giant trucks, and British people are just, you got to yell, you got to hoot and holler. This is a monster truck rally. I'm doing my
it would have to be very polite. So I want to try to bring a few strands together from what we've said and bring it back to the movement. For example, you talked about rituals. I always associate Durkheim with a lot of work on rituals and stuff. But it does point to the fact that, you know, there is a function to rituals.
Yeah.
And we are social animals. Mm. Brings me back to Wendy talking about the influencers. And I think one influence or one issue there is that they are very individualistic. And this is also the problem with the right-wing vegans, is the fact that they don't have much of appreciation that they're in a social movement. And so therefore they can just dismiss humanity as the oppressor. Which, of course, as you were saying, Wendy, it's true, right? You can see it everywhere. You just walk out your front door and it slaps you in the face. But just like Leslie Cross said, we're also the liberators, right? And so there's no point in just being completely down on humanity. Oh, we're just a bunch of oppressors. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the Kanyorowski thing about hating everybody. And of course, from a social movement point of view, and especially if you want to then move that into alliance politics, that's no good.
Yeah.
You know, because we've got to have some hope that we can forge ahead, even in this difficult kind of right-wing climate that we're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a tendency, and let's be honest, we all dip into it sometimes when we get exposed to things that are just too much. This misanthropy, like, it's there, right? But you're right, it's not effective for social movement. So this is something I've really been thinking about, and I must credit, actually, this is another shout out to my YouTube channel, but the very first interview that's been released now is with someone named Lee Hall, who was she's been active in the movement since the 80s. And Lee Hall comes from an environmental law background, but also having been in the movement for a long time and written quite a lot about this and thought about this quite a lot. When I'm asking them in the interview, like, what do you think is going on? What is the legacy you hope to leave behind? I was really shocked by this, that Lee was actually focusing quite a bit on the role of humans in this as primates. So first off, very much so wanting to focus on, well, let's be honest, we have human privilege. But also on the other side of that coin is that we're human, we're primates. And so it's really sparked me, my imagination. I've been thinking about this quite a bit and talking about it with my vegan friends. Just what does that mean for humans? Because we're so conditioned, I think, maybe this is our feminist training, we're so conditioned to see ourselves as the oppressor. But what if actually we start to see humans as, yes, being in a privileged position and having a certain level of rational capacity and intelligence and opposable thumbs or whatever it may be, what then is our role in the ecosystem? And Lee was then considering, well, maybe our role in the ecosystem is to be pro-social and to help out other animals. Because one of the things, and I got into a debate with this with one of my friends who's vegan, who I told them, I was just telling them, I can't watch nature documentaries because a certain narrative that they're trying to talk about with humans and the environment is that we are separate. So surely you guys would have seen those documentaries where an animal is in distress and then the documentarian will say, but we must let nature take its course. And they step back and document as this animal suffers and maybe dies. I've always found that troubling. And it's one of the reasons I never watched nature documentaries to this day. That is not natural. That is us making a decision about a particular narrative of our role in nature, that being separate from. I would actually say that human beings, our role as a primate with all these special skills is not to say, well, we're outside of nature, but actually we have an obligation to nature, not only to right what all these horrible things that we have done, our species has done, but even in an ideal utopian future world, maybe our role in the ecosystem is to be actively involved in assisting non-human animals, not in a colonial way, not in a patronizing way, but intervening and adding good to the world that can benefit all species. That's what I've been thinking about lately.
Corey, that was interesting, that interview, because it's interesting you picked up on that part, actually, because it was something that came up in that interview that I was really curious about, which Lee said, which was about the coyotes. And because Lee does advocacy for deers, don't they? And so it was that thing that they said about there's advocacy towards using contraception for deer, so that to control numbers, basically. But we shouldn't really be doing that, and we should just let the coyotes, who will deal with that naturally. So we're leaving that back to nature. And it got me thinking about the same things that you're saying, but from the other side, thinking like, where are the boundaries? Like, where do we intervene? And then where don't we intervene? Like, so we don't intervene to protect the deer against the coyote because that's natural for them to kill them. So we do other things or whatever, or we maybe try and protect them in some way, or we help them, or do we just leave them be and go, well, the coyotes are going to sort out the numbers of the deers and all of that? And then, I think it's difficult to know when to intervene and not. Do you agree with that? I just sometimes really troubles me.
I also feel qualms. No, I agree with you completely. I think a whole book could be written on the philosophy. And Lee Hall, by the way, is also a philosopher. They've written a book on animal rights philosophy for people who don't know. So this is definitely in their wheelhouse. But I felt a bit uncomfortable when they said that, because I'm thinking, well, that means violence. But unfortunately, that is nature, right? There is violence. But let me say this. I clear out cobwebs in my house every couple of months, which isn't enough to keep them down, because they work quick, don't they? And there's been a couple of times where I've been walking by my windowsill and heard a bee in distress, and they make sounds of distress. And just last week, there was a bee in the spider web, and I kind of heard the buzzing. I didn't know what it was until the pitch went up really fast and high. And I looked over. It's because there was a spider coming towards the bee, because the bee recognized that the spider was coming and started squealing even louder. And my instinct was to the rescue, like brush the spider away, got the bee out, put the bee in a safe place, tried to use a cotton swab to disentangle them. I don't know if I was successful. They were struggling so much, I just left them. I could not walk by even that bee. Said, sorry, spider, it's going to have to be another bee, another meal when I'm not here and I don't see it. I just felt obligated to intervene. And that's just for a bee, much less a so-called higher species like a deer. A whole book can be written about this.
A whole book, yeah.
It's also a very, as you said, a very instinctive thing to do. That's very prevalent during natural disasters, for example. When you have humans and non-humans trying to survive in a fire or in a flood, and then it becomes instinctive to rescue the non-human person who is next to you, even by people who are not vegan and who do not share the philosophy or the ideology that all animals have an equal right to be here on this planet. But they don't even think about it. They come to the rescue, and surely it must be something deeply rooted within us to act in this way.
There's neuroscience on this now. In fact, Marge Kramer, she was involved with the Feminists for Animal Rights back in the 80s and the 90s, but she's also a surgeon. And was telling me in one of her interviews about this growing field of neuroscience of compassion. So, I mean, not that we need to like map this out, the neuroscience, and be very positivistic about it, but there probably is some solutions deep in the brain. But should we be biologically essentialist about it? Just because our brain was programmed that way, we must obey it? I don't know.
It's like Deb said, I know you just brought this up a moment ago, Roger, but I think this speaks to a lot of what's put out about our fellow animals, is that they're living by instinct, and they're, you know, it's a dog eat dog world, and it's tooth and claw, and it's survival of the fittest. When actually there's a lot of work that shows, and a lot of research, and even just our own instinct and what we observe in our fellow animals, is that there's a lot of mutual aid, there's a lot of cooperation, there's a lot of collaboration. Other animals make friends with other animals across species, and they also help each other, not just in their own species. And so I don't think that's essentially human anyway, that what we're talking about, that instinct to help. I think it you know, it's across species as well.
I like what Deb said there, that this is the way we frame it. Don't quote me on the statistic, but I did see it in my readings years ago, where it's something like 80% of life on Earth is symbiotic, but we focus on that 20% of the violent, carnivoristic, whatever you want to call it. The norm for life on Earth is to cooperate and to help one another and to care for one another. And you're right, Wendy, not just within our own species, but across species, and not just humans and other species, but non-human animals and other non-human animals. That's a ubiquitous thing that we see, because
you get that on the street though, don't you? Kind of, well, animals kill animals. So, and you think, well, actually, in terms of the majority of our fellow animals, they don't.
Yeah.
You know, and there's quite a lot of research now where our fellow animals will help each other out quite a lot, including other species, you know, which the behaviorists and all that would have denied could even be a thing. You know, like, you know, what's in it for them to do that? And I mean, you've even got things where you've got predators helping an individual from a prey species when they're not hungry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting kind of thing, you know.
There's another book I've recently read, which is similar in topic to that, but I think important from a vegan feminist perspective. It's called Bitch. It's kind of like a pop zoology book. And first off, I can't necessarily recommend it. It relies on quite a lot of vivisection, which is really problematic. But the argument of the book basically is that for over a century, these feminist perspectives on the nature of life, or specifically on evolution, these feminist perspectives have been actively suppressed. A lot of this has to do with hero worship of Charles Darwin. This becomes his theory has become so institutionalized as fact, as though it's not. There's no need to add to it or challenge it. Basically saying that life on Earth is through male selection and male behaviors, and actually that's not the case. We have so many species on Earth that are symbiotic. Also, they'll be female led, or they'll be mostly female groups, or women, or not women, female animals are doing the selection, and they're actually impacting evolution quite a lot, and in many cases more so than the males. We also see a lot of gender or sex fluidity among species. All that, most of us, when we grew up getting biology classes, never got any of that information. We got a very strict patriarchal interpretation of this is what nature is like, reaching back to the very gender conservative times of Charles Darwin. So I think it's very important as vegan feminists is, to go into this new realm of thinking about what is our role. If we are trying to connect ourselves more to nature, what is our role in that? And what is the legacy that has come before us that maybe we've been detached from because of patriarchal scientific norms?
Yeah, well, that brings us back to Lee Hall. I mean, I don't know whether their book On Their Own Terms is still available, but in the 1990s, I was on a thing called Animal Rights Debate. It was a Yahoo debate site, and they were there, and their name was Pro Bonobo, which was really brilliant because it's kind of like a play on words of the legal thing and all that.
That's pretty great, yeah.
Yeah, and but the interesting thing was they were very interested in bonobos and the way that bonobos sort out problems and disputes in their community, which is generally speaking not through violence. And you say, well, if you're looking for a primate model for humanity, then there's one right there.
And very interestingly about bonobos is that they are just as genetically close to us as chimpanzees. But when we're talking about this is the nature of human beings, chimpanzees sometimes eat meat, sometimes hunt, sometimes have this like patriarchal kind of hierarchy in their societies. Well, why are we focusing on chimpanzees when bonobos are a matriarchal society? They also enjoy a lot of lesbian sex, incidentally, and they're very much more peaceful, and they're almost completely vegan. But we focus on the chimpanzees because that's the story we want to tell. But they are both genetically related to us, and in fact, more primates than not eat plant-based and are pro-social and are not necessarily so patriarchal like chimpanzees.
Yeah, bonobos, they almost like incorporate that slogan "Make love, not war," really, because they do sort things out with sex, don't they? Yeah, let's get it on and forget all that.
Yeah. I think I remember a study or a lot of research that was done. I don't know if it was Robert Sapolsky who did a lot of studies on bonobos as well. Please correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the chat or here. But I'm sure there was. Remember we talked about this on a show years ago, that there was a study. They'd followed this group, and when something happened, something really horrible happened to a lot of the group. I think it was the males of the group were going off like foraging into the woods, and then there was some kind of holiday camp close by, and at the holiday camp they were leaving lots of sort of waste and old food and stuff close by, and I think some of the males were foraging in the woods and were eating some of this stuff, and I think some of it turned out to be quite toxic for them, and so a lot of the males died in this group. And then so the scientists continued to study this group, and when the males didn't return, the group completely changed, and they, yeah, like you said, they had a lot more the females of the group were running the group, and they were cooperating in a different way, sorting out their issues in a different way. This might be where this information is coming from, actually, that you've just been talking about from these studies, and they were communicating in a different way. And then when new males entered the group, the females were teaching the males a different way to be. It was like, no, we don't do things like that. We do it like this. Males were like following suit and like adapting to the new like culture of the group. And I just love that. But I like it really, when I heard about these studies, it really made me see for like very clearly how fellow animals have cultures, and they affect those cultures, like individuals and different experiences affect the cultures. They're not just like, oh, this is what cats do, this is what dogs do, this is what chimps do. They're different depending on who is in that group and depending on what experiences they have, and that's going to affect their culture. Like I remember hearing about I'm not sure if this was chimps or a different primate, but one of them started to wear a bit of straw behind their ear, and that got passed around the group, and then it got passed to different groups, and it became a little bit of a fashion thing to like wear a bit of straw behind the ear, and it's just got passed through. And just things like that, we have to like remember they are individuals, and they have cultures and communities, and they have all these amazing.
Well, the straw thing, that's how the Wurzels began, isn't it?
I think that's where the Wurzels got their inspiration from, definitely.
Well, they got their combine harvester. So we're an hour and 13 in. Have we got things to wrap up with for Corey, or what?
Nella, did you get to ask your question? Did you ask it in a different way?
Yes, I did. I asked about the pushback from feminists, which I think is a larger issue within the social movements and the different social movements and the left in general. The position of the animal liberation movement in all this. And actually, going to share, I was in a protest on the 8th of last March, Women's Day. So I was there with a vegan group, a vegan NGO, mainly grassroots activists, and we had our banner that said "Vegan Life," and we were holding placards with feminist, sayings and everything. And then this guy comes and says, "Do you mind stay at the back of the procession, because this day is for feminists, for feminists and feminist groups." And some people, some women answered that all kinds of oppressions have a position here and are interrelated and everything. And he said, yes, but maybe today you could stay at the back. And I say, you are a man, and you came here to to lecture us about who is to be accepted and at what position in a feminist thing today. So in his mind, vegan women were not even, at the same standing with him, who was there with the leftists, with the left party. So I think that I don't know what the answer is, and I wanted to ask about that. Should we go everywhere as vegan blogs, for example, as animal rights groups, and participating in all kinds of events? We did the same at the Pride, but it was much better at the Pride. It was very inclusive and not corporate at all, and very pro-Palestine. Last year too, and this year it was almost resembled a pro-Palestine protest. It was huge. But is this maybe a solution to decide to go out there and protest as feminists, as allies to whatever cause, but wearing or holding the animal liberation symbols or vegan logos, whatever? How could we not fight for a place, because we deserve a place on these tables, but no one seems to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Well, two things come to mind from that story. But first off, did you say something to this person who tried to put you in the back of the line?
Yes, I said you are a man. So maybe it's not a good idea to.
I was very polite.
Well, it's like that Harry Enfield thing, isn't it? Women, know your place.
Know your place.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Well, okay. So first thing I wanted to say is that we were talking about Ida B. Wells earlier. And for people who don't know about Ida B. Wells, she came to prominence because in the late 1800s, she wrote critically about the prevalence of lynching in the South. But then she was also very much so involved so she's involved with the Black liberation movement, but she was also very involved as a suffragette. But when in the United States, the suffragettes did their big famous march on Washington, there were some Southern feminists there who were not too keen on the Black women who were going to be marching by state. Because actually, Ida B. Wells was run out of the South. I think she was actually in Virginia, because the lynch mob came after her. So she moved to Illinois. But then when the big march happened in Washington, D.C., she came and she was going to march with her home state of Illinois. But some of the Southern feminists were a bit uncomfortable with that, to say the least, and asked if the Black folks could not march with their states, but go to the back of the march, which Ida B. Wells was not having. So she pieced off. She disappeared. But then very famously with this protest march, by the way, this was the very first time there was a massive march like this on Washington. It was a very important strategic development, not just for the feminist movement, but for other movements. Anyway, it wasn't very long into this march when it all just kind of collapsed, because the police, of course, were not on the side of the feminists, and there were lots of men there to harass and heckle and to assault. And so it really collapsed very quickly into a bit of mayhem. And at that point, here comes Ida B. Wells, right up back into her place where she was meant to be with her other feminists in the state of Illinois, and basically use that as an opportunity to come back and get rid of this racial segregation of the feminist march. So just so you know, this is a legacy of nonsense with the feminist movement. So boo hiss. But the other thing I wanted to highlight is, and this is coming again from the interviews we were talking about, but there's this woman. I say this woman, there's a handful of folks, but it really is a growing small group of people, with a few women who are in the lead here, that's why I'm giving them a shout out. If there's anyone else who's in the area who wants to get involved with them, I'm sure they'd be very happy to have you in Krakow. And Krakow, of course, has, like the United States, historically dealt with a lot of authoritarian nonsense and anti-LGBT, anti-women pushback, and of course, not very friendly to animals either. That's a given. But one of the things that they did this year, is the first year they did it, was the woman's name, by the way, is Monica Kohut. And she dressed up with her colleagues. There's only 4 of them. They dressed up like the Handmaid's Tale and went to the famous feminist conference on International Women's Day on March 8th. And they basically protested and said, no feminism without veganism. You're talking about representing women's or challenging women's reproductive injustice. Well, what's going on with cows, pigs, chickens, and other animals. And it was she had it recorded and put on YouTube. If we can find the link and I don't know, stick it in the comments somewhere. It's extremely profound. And of course, she's getting a lot of pushback from that. She's hoping to replicate it again next year. But I think that is a really amazing example of that's happening right now, of vegan feminists who are going straight into the heart of feminism and pushing back on that. Back in the 1980s and 90s, Feminists for Animal Rights, Marty Keel, Carol Adams, and others would also actively attend women's conferences and sometimes get opportunities to present or to speak. So kind of using the channels. But I think there's something a bit more poignant in a lot of ways when you show up in that sort of visual protest and get people thinking. So, yeah, I actually agree with that. I think that'd be a really good strategy if we start incorporating protests into mainstream feminist events or just showing up. It doesn't have to be a protest.
Yeah, brilliant. Love that.
Right, dead air. That's nice.
Dead air. Do you know what? I was just thinking how much I absolutely love doing this. I love it. Just sitting, chatting with other vegans, people who are on the same page in the same, everyone might not agree on every little tiny thing. I don't know. I think we tend to see eye to eye on a lot of things, people in the chat as well, but it's just so lovely. I just love it. And so going back to what you were saying earlier, Corey, about bringing people together with your vegan witchcraft and the whole community thing and rituals, and you can even feel it. Like I even feel now like such a busy day, rough kind of few weeks and stuff like that, but this is just so soothing. I think it's just really lovely. So I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Thank you to all of you and the chatters as well for being here and just
thank you all for doing this. I now know very well how much work goes into behind the scenes of this. So making this community space is so important. And not just that, obviously you guys are doing something extremely unique. You're bringing in a more critical approach and a feminist approach, an anti-racist approach that is much, much sorely needed in this movement, isn't it?
Sadly.
Yeah. We sometimes feel like we're in the niche of the niche of the movement.
Often we're completely niched.
We're niched.
Right. So should we say goodbye then, people? Or
and remind everyone to subscribe and go to the YouTube channel and look up the interviews. That was really, really good news. I was really happy when I read your post about it. I think it was much needed.
Yeah. If everybody watches every single one of these interviews, you will become a master, a mistress, a mixtress, let's not gender it, of vegan feminism. All the who's distilled into one playlist.
Brilliant.
See there.
Funny enough, Nella, we were talking a while ago, weren't we, about doing something vegan feminism, like a sister show to this or something, just to platform, women.
Could be a witch's moot.
It's what, sorry?
Could be a witch's moot. We could gather.
Yeah, no, that's what. And because I said to Nella, I said, "Oh, Corey's beating us to the thing," but not that it's a competition. But we were so delighted.
We need more of it. We need more.
Yeah, like that, and that's what I thought.
Of it.
This is the start. Like we need more.
Create an ecosystem of vegan feminism. This is not obviously not a competition. The more we have, the more of a culture, and it's more normalized in that way. But that's more work. Do you want to do more work?
Sadly, I feel so driven. I feel so like knackered, but so driven as well. Like every day, it's like, what else? What else can I do? So yeah, I don't know how you lot feel about it, but
so right then, people, we have to thank everyone for sticking with us as always. Now, why would you? But thank you so much that you do. And
thanks.
We shall see you again soon. I don't know when. Have we got anything in the plans, Wendy? Nella, do you know?
We've got things looming, but we haven't got anything to definitely announce at this moment. Yeah. But watch this space. We will be back.
Yeah, well, looming is about the right thing, isn't it?
Materializing.
Yeah. Right, people. We'll say goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.